Welcome back to Startup Talk. I'm your host, the Startup Coach and founder of TorontoStarts, one of the largest startup communities in Canada. And with me today is Daire Burke of Swoop Canada. How you doing, Daire?
Good. Appreciate you bringing me on, Craig, as always.
Well, funding is the number one thing people ask about. They want to know how to get money for the startups, what's available. And it's a shame when people don't take advantage of funding and leave money on the table, especially when it comes to tax credits and other monies that are available. We just went through COVID. There was a whole bunch of different COVID programs for different people, and people need to be aware of this. So it's very valuable having great partners like you that cover all the aspects of funding programs for different businesses. And since I know what you do, why don't we tell the audience a little bit about Swoop Canada?
Yeah, of course. So I think you touched on it a little bit already, Craig, but fundamentally, we're trying to make the process as easy and as quick and as seamless as possible for small businesses to access funding. We help businesses access loans, grants, tax credits, and also find equity investors if that's what they're looking for. In addition to funding, we also help businesses with savings of different kinds, such as FX, such as energies and utilities and insurance as well. So yeah, we try to be a one-stop shop for business financing for small and medium-sized businesses.
And I know Swoop is international and has been out for a long time. How long has Swoop
Yeah.
been in Canada?
So we are quite new to Canada. We launched November 1st, 2021. So we are quite new, but the reaction in the market's been fantastic. And we've been able to, in that period of time, demonstrate quite a lot of traction. We've got a lot of businesses now using the platform. We partner with, most of the banks and non-bank lenders in Canada. We've got about 55 lenders on the platform. So we've been able to really build a comprehensive marketplace before launching and even after launching as well. So we do have a pretty comprehensive offering for small businesses in Canada. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that we're getting such a good volume of registrations all the time. And we've been able to help quite a few small businesses in Canada.
So I mentioned earlier that one of the number one thing I get asked about is funding.
Yeah.
Um, so the people don't know when to reach out. Are they too early, too late? So when should someone reach out to Swoop Canada to find out what's available and start that relationship?
Yeah, there's no such time as too early for us. Like, a key part of our mission is being relevant for businesses right throughout their life cycle. So whether they're in the ideation phase, they're starting out, maybe they're even creating their first business plan or pitch deck, we'll be able to have a conversation and maybe steer them in the right direction. If they're a business that's hoping to grow really fast but is looking to invest in technology and product development, we can help them find a VC or an angel investor that might be a good fit. We can always look at startup loans if they haven't quite started. There's some programs in Canada that help businesses with startup loans. Then if they're starting to mature, grow up, they're looking to purchase equipment, inventory, stock, maybe hire their first person. Again, there's lending products and non-diluted funding options there, and there's also some grant programs and some government programs that can help them get to where they need to get to. So we try to bring together all of the sources of funding in the marketplace so that we're not just debt and we're not just equity. We're trying to piece together all the components that businesses can make use of.
Now you mentioned lending in there, which is great because most startups I talk to are focused on grants, which can be very competitive instead of tax credits.
Right.
So can you tell me the difference between grants and tax credits?
Yeah. So grants obviously is money from government sources for specific uses. And this is where there's sometimes we find there can be a knowledge gap. Most government grant programs are structured in a co-funded manner. And what I mean by that is if you're taking on a project that achieves some goal in sustainability or hiring somebody, very often the business has to fund all or part of the expense. And then the government grant program will then fund part of the cost or all of the cost after the fact. So that means that a business will have to have capital or access to capital in order to do the project or do whatever the grant is designed to achieve. And then the grant will come in support of that. But very often it's a co-funded grant. So grant, government cash, given to the business for a specific use case. Tax credits, as the name suggests, is funding that's used to offset tax liabilities of the company in the future. A lot of businesses are loss making, so it can also be a positive cash injection. So I think a really, really common and well known program in Canada is Shred, which is a fantastic program that allows businesses to commercialize innovation. If they're developing IP, if they're developing knowledge, they can apply for the Shred program, and it is a cash injection, just like a grant. So yeah, there are differences, but I think a key point to note is when businesses are looking for grants, as you point out, it is competitive. One of the really popular grant programs that we've sort of helped businesses with is Can Export, and they allocate funding to the program. The funding gets allocated out to businesses, and then they'll replenish it at another point in time. So it can be competitive for businesses, but as I mentioned already, a key part. Key kind of knowledge gap that we see is that businesses don't realize that the government aren't just going to hand you the cash to do the project. Very often you have to co-fund the project.
Yeah, and that's a good point. A lot of times you have to put a certain amount of money in and show what you're doing there.
Right.
Um, and you mentioned the can export program briefly. Most people do not aren't aware of what that means and the amount of funding that's available. Can you just give us a brief summary of that one?
Yeah, so it's a program that's been around a while. They released another tranche of funding in January, so they are at different points in time replenishing that pool of cash that's available for businesses. As the name suggests, it's designed for exporting, so businesses that might have customers in the US or elsewhere would be in scope and eligible to apply for that funding. And the amount of funding available varies depending on the pool that's available. So it could be up to $20,000 or it could be up to $60,000 depending on when exactly, depending on the time of year.
And if I understand correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, the can export program is one of the only programs that helps you pay for marketing.
Yeah, exactly. So the use cases for it are far-reaching. So really helpful program. And as I say, depending on the scale of your business and what you're doing, you can get up to $50,000. You can get up to $250,000 if you're a larger SME. But the scope is quite wide in terms of activities and the type of businesses that would fall under the net. So really good program.
Yeah, so if people are doing conferences and marketing campaigns in the US and drumming up business, they really need to take a look at these types of programs because otherwise they're leaving money on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a key theme of grants, leaving money on the table. So another one that came online quite recently, which is a fantastic program, is the Digital Adoption Program. And this could be as simple as you're selling online, so you're an e-commerce businesses. You might not even realize that you're eligible for this new program. So the scope of what digital adoption means is purposefully quite wide and far-reaching and encompasses quite a lot of activities. So there are a lot of businesses that are either doing something digital or intending to invest in some type of digitization for their business, and therefore could qualify for this grant as well. So as you say, half the battle sometimes is just staying up to speed and understanding what's out there and having a finger on the pulse, which is quite time consuming because these programs change week to week. And that's one of the value propositions that we hope to bring as a platform so that businesses, when they register an account with us for free, can get an up-to-date view of what grants are available at that point in time and are relevant for that business.
And you mentioned the time sensitivity of some of these things. Government will release funding for a grant program, and it can be oversubscribed within weeks or days. As we've seen during COVID, things have been more funded and less funded, and things
Right.
change rapidly. How important it is to have your finger on the pulse of these things, because a lot of founders drag their feet and say, "I'll look at it later," but oftentimes that's too late.
Absolutely. So, we've seen quite a few examples where people put on the long finger, uh, you know, try to write the grant application themselves and maybe don't get it quite right. So, being proactive, getting ahead of it, incorporating it in maybe a monthly review cycle where once a month you check in and see what might be available is maybe good hygiene. And then for some of those more complex grants, like if you're doing a big infrastructure project in sustainability, for example, there could be quite a lot of funding there, but sometimes the applications can be either time consuming or a little bit complex or require a little bit of extra knowledge. And there are lots of businesses out there to help you with that as well, and might not charge you fees up front. So it is accessible for startups as well. So I think that's another thing to bear in mind, that sometimes the grant writing piece can turn founders off because, you know, by their nature, they're startup founders, they're busy, they haven't got the time. But this is, you know, really helpful bit funding that could take them to the next level.
Absolutely. And a lot of startups always come to me and say, well, I don't think there's anything for my industry or my type of business. Are there specific industries or types of businesses or sectors that you work with, or maybe more importantly, that you don't work with?
Not especially. And I think one of the value propositions that we bring is for some sectors, and I'll use cannabis as an example. Sometimes they get treated you know, a certain way by the traditional lenders. So if you're a cannabis business, it's difficult to get traditional lending because they won't lend to cannabis businesses or businesses that are involved in manufacturing of guns or those sin industries and gambling, etc. Now, whilst we haven't really been working with those industries, cannabis is a sector that we do a lot of work with, and we help them with grants and lending products. So generally speaking, we're absolutely sector agnostic, and we'll look to help you know, all businesses with their financing needs and help them, you know, get to where they need to.
You mentioned equity early on. How do you help businesses with funding via equity?
Yeah, so our network includes, you know, aside from the debt finance providers that we work with, we have a large pool of venture capital funds and angel investors and angel funds that we work with. And the way that we work with them is we onboard them as funding partners, understand what type of companies they're looking for in their portfolio, what their investment thesis is, what their ticket sizes are, etc. And within our user base of businesses that we come in contact with, we'll match them off where there's a suitable fit. So if we have a business that is, you know, creating solutions related to digital assets, or you know, creating a new marketplace or some solution, and they're looking for equity financing, so they're looking to do a capital raise from a venture fund or from an angel investor, we'll help them get matched off with a fund that we believe is a good fit. That's essentially how our process works on the equity financing side.
We talked about loans a couple of times, and I mentioned it before, but founders seem to shy away from loans, even though it's one of the cheapest forms of capital. What types of loans do you help with?
Yeah, so on the debt side of the platform, we do have quite a comprehensive array of loans on offer. So everything from startup loans, corporate cards, lines of credit, to asset financing and equipment leasing, term lending, right up to commercial mortgages for some of the more mature, bigger companies that use our platform. So we do try to make sure that we have those non-dilutive lending options for companies, irrespective of where they are in their journey. As I said earlier, for startups, you know, sometimes the first starting point is a startup loan. So it's not a massive cash injection, might be $20,000 to $60,000, but it'll allow maybe that founder a little bit of capital to test and validate their product, or invest a little bit in marketing, or maybe even hire their first person. So it allows them to kind of get moving on their journey. And to your point around shying away from debt, yeah, it's always a really interesting question, and a kind of a topic of conversation. But that is non-dilutive funding. So, you know, you can test it against your operating model, assuming that your unit economics make sense, that you can take on a little bit of debt and service it. You're getting yourself further on your journey. You're growing, but you're not giving away any of your company as you would be on the equity side of the business. So I think the old finance saying of debt is cheaper than equity does typically ring true.
Absolutely. Now, I noticed on your platform you have over 200 grants that are searchable. How does all that work? And can you give us an example of a couple?
Yeah, of course. So as you say, we have a database of products in our platform within grants because Canada has such a diverse and comprehensive array of government funding programs. We do have over 200 in our platform, and on a weekly basis that is changing. So we're updating grants with new, you know, expiry dates, new amounts. We're adding new grants. We're taking off ones that are expired. So it is quite a dynamic landscape. So the way it works is a company registers on Swoop. They provide some information about the business. They provide some information about what type of funding they're looking for, what they're looking to achieve, and using those data points and any data that they've integrated. So we also allow businesses to integrate their accountancy software, integrate their bank account. We can use those data points to match them with grant funding programs that are relevant for them. So depending on what age they are, depending on what province they're operating in, depending on what sector they're operating in, all of those pieces are used to match them with those 200 odd government funding programs that you mentioned that are in our platform.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Shred tax credit program? Who's it for
Yeah,
and
of
how much
course.
people can get back?
Yeah. So Shred is an R&D innovation program. So it again is very, very far reaching and is relevant for a huge number of businesses across Canada. So whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in software development, if you're creating anything IP, if you're creating any type of knowledge, there's a very real chance that those activities are what's called shreddable. So they are in scope for a shred application. Really, really lucrative program when you compare it against similar R&D tax credit programs in other jurisdictions. So, as you mentioned, we do operate in a lot of different markets in Ireland, in the UK, and in Australia. And I think Shred is probably the best R&D tax program that we've come up against, that we've come across. So businesses can submit a Shred application, and the cash comes back from the government as an actual cash advance, which is incredibly valuable for founders early in their journey. In addition to that, when Shred applications have been submitted, if a founder wants to get moving on the project and use that capital as quickly as possible, there are also options to finance the application, as there are with other grant funding programs. So rather than waiting 4 months, 5 months, which is sometimes the time frame that it can take to get the application back, founders can actually get an advance on that cash and then repay the loan when the Shred application comes in.
Yeah, and people don't really understand. Once you start talking Shred, their eyes roll over. But I like to keep it simple. And depending on what province you're in, you can get back 66 to 68 cents on the dollar you spend on
Yeah,
development technical
absolutely.
stuff. So, I mean, like, if you're hiring people to do technical work, you should be looking into this.
Yeah, so 65% plus, and that's salaries, contractors, anything that goes into that production of the new knowledge or the IP. So there's a huge amount that can be included in the Shred application. And there's other programs like Irap that are also very similar and should also be considered. At a provincial level, there's some other programs, like if you're in Quebec, e-business is another one that's also worth looking at. So it is a diverse and sort of far-reaching grants landscape out there for innovation. So Shred is, I would say, the most well-known and probably the most lucrative, but there are other programs that are worth looking at as well.
We've got a couple of questions from our chat room on YouTube and here on Zoom, so I'm going to do the first one here. Is it true that grants, even from government, are taxable?
Um,
And didn't bring you on as an accountant, but
no, I may stand corrected on this, but I don't believe grants are taxable at source anyway when they come into the business.
Fabulous. Thanks for that. And another question here about, can Swoop help with bridge financing in advance of a larger expected upcoming rounds?
Sorry, Craig. Yes, absolutely. So we've helped a number of businesses get debt financing uh, in between rounds to extend cash runway, or indeed prolong how long it takes to do a second funding round or a first funding round. Venture debt products are very popular here. So some VCs that we work with and some lenders that we work with operate as both equity investors and debt providers. So bridging finance between funding rounds is really, really popular, particularly with technology companies that are a good fit for equity financing. So that's something that we see quite a lot of, and something that's getting increasingly popular, I think, in Canada.
One of the things I see that startups don't take enough advantage of is the different hiring grants and programs from the government that are available. Can you just mention one or two?
Yeah. So again, at a provincial level, there are various programs available for hiring, whether there's co-op programs. So we ourselves as a business have benefited from Ontario grants for taking on co-ops. There's If you're taking on a tech hire, there's various programs available at a provincial level as well. So depending on what province you're in, there's almost always some hiring grant available. In particular, where you're taking on engineering or technology resources.
Now, funding aside, you also help with savings. How does that work?
Yeah, exactly. So we are a one-stop shop for financing. So aside from just funding, we try to make sure that businesses are getting the most out of our platform. So we help businesses save money in foreign exchange. So if they're purchasing stock or materials from another country, if they've got customers in another country, and they're dealing with multiple currencies, rather than just it going through their regular business bank account, we try to make sure that they're paying the lowest rate possible. And in many cases, we've been able to save businesses 10, 20, $30,000 across the year, small businesses, just by changing to a new FX solution. And another piece that's becoming increasingly topical is related to energy. So we're, walking into what seems like an energy crisis at the moment across the globe. Businesses might be looking for different ways to save on utilities. We have a partner on our website that compares rates in the different provinces in Canada to help businesses find the cheapest rate available, and that's something that we've done in other markets as well. We've helped businesses with insurance and business banking as well, to make sure that they're getting the lowest rates possible there too. So we do have a savings component to our offering as well, that we're really, really proud of as well.
You mentioned different programs in different provinces. What provinces do you cover and help with?
So we are across Canada. We've helped companies in all provinces, including Quebec. Even though our user journey is in English, but by that logic kind of speaks to an English speaking audience. We will be releasing a French version of our user journey within the next 6 months as well. But that, as I say, we are pan Canada and serve businesses in all provinces.
Are the different programs in each province similar, or are there a couple that stand out?
I think on the innovation side, Quebec has some really interesting one. I mentioned the e-business program that exists exclusively there. That is really interesting. I think on the hiring grants as well, Ontario and BC have some programs that don't exist in that I've seen in other provinces. So there are nuances, and again, within our matching engine, we do match businesses based on province as well, so they can get a good view of what grant programs are available in their province.
So we have another question coming in about working with Swoop. Do we have to pay to use Swoop, or do you take a percentage of the grants we get? It's probably different depending on what's happening. So how does that work?
Yeah, of course. So we don't charge businesses to use our platform. So you can sign up, you can use the platform, you can see your matches, you can interact with the products. All of that is free. We don't charge if a business, gets matched with a grant. where we generate revenue as a company is through success fees from lending products typically. So if you get matched with a loan and you successfully draw down on the loan that you choose from the matches, then the lender will typically pay Swoop a commission for originating their business. On the grants side of the business, it's more of a value add offering that we're bringing to the table, because we don't collect revenue, we don't collect commissions from the government, because that's not how they're structured as entities. So it's more of a value add piece that we're bringing, because it's essentially adding value to the lives of small business owners.
I think that answers it great. Um, the federal government just came out with a budget. What new things should businesses be keeping an eye on?
Sorry, Craig, my mic just dropped to me. Yeah, so federal budget was a really interesting one, particularly for innovators. So if over the next number of years, businesses in Canada are involved in innovation or indeed creating knowledge, there is a new fund that's been set up to distribute capital to those companies, which I think was interesting and definitely welcomed by most people in the innovation space. There wasn't a huge amount for small businesses specifically, and I know the CFIB were quite animated on this. 67% of SMEs in Canada came out of COVID with, COVID related debt. So debt that was taken on by the business during COVID in many instances to kind of survive. I think the average across all was around 150K, maybe 180K actually. And that was significant when you think about what the average size of those companies are. So I think there was a hope in some quarters that there might be some alleviating measures for that debt, which there wasn't. So I think that unfortunately was missing. I think another one to call out was the taxation rate was made slightly more favorable for small businesses, which obviously is something that's beneficial. The immigration strategy in Canada, I think, is one that sets us apart globally. And I know they made some differences to the temporary foreign worker program, which expands it. And really, I think that helps small business owners to build up their workforce more easily on the back of COVID. So there is, I think, in most parts of the economy, a bit of a talent crunch and a bit of a talent shortage. So getting some kind of skilled foreign workers in will hopefully help alleviate that over the next number of years. So I think the main winners out of the federal budget from our perspective, and again, our lens is very much business focused, not really dealing with personal credit for the moment, but from a business perspective, companies involved in innovation, there's certainly some wins in there. There's some tax changes that will be favorable. And the temporary foreign worker program, I think, is also an interesting development for businesses that will be taking on more staff over the next couple of years.
So if I wanted to, how does the process of working with Swoop work? We're going to talk about a few more things here, but I want to talk to somebody because I don't know what's available for me. Do I go on your website, sign up? How does the process work? What can a startup founder expect?
Yeah, it's super easy. Go to swoopfunding.com, hit join Swoop. The registration takes about 2 minutes. As I mentioned already, it's free. You'll have the opportunity to just look at funding options. You'll also have the opportunity to speak with a member of our team directly if you'd like to. We usually call everyone that interacts with us anyway. There's other ways of interacting with us through our website, whether it's through our chat box, whether it's through the phone number that's available, a direct line to our team. You can communicate to us via email, again, in the contact us section. You can reach out to us on social media, on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So there's a whole bunch of ways you can come in contact with us. I think the easiest way to get plugged into our service is by registering an account. So go to swoopfunding.com, hit join Swoop, and the process takes about 2 minutes.
Great. And people can sign up to have a call there or talk to
people? Yeah, absolutely. So if you register with us, our team will give you a call right away. There's other ways of booking a call on our website directly if you'd like to have a conversation with a member of our team. Navigating finance is a bit complex. It's not straightforward for a lot of people, and very often people are time poor. You're trying to run your business. So all we're trying to do is cut through some of that time and help you do some of the heavy lifting. So you know, always feel free to reach out, and we'll have a conversation with you and try to figure out what the best funding strategy might be for you.
What are the most common things you see where areas you see where startups are leaving money on the table, not taking advantage of programs they might not be aware of?
Yeah, I think grants is an obvious one, because it changes so frequently and new programs come online. And unless you're plugged in to some grants ecosystem, maybe it's through social media or maybe it's through partnerships, but unless you're kind of plugged into some outlet that's showing you where these grants are coming from, you'll probably miss out. So that's one area that, money's being left on the table. I think the other piece is when businesses are investing in new projects, they're developing a new product, they're starting out. There's you know there's ways of getting the most amount of capital possible. So you submit a shred application. If you finance it and get moving earlier, you can submit another shred application and make it even bigger. So trying to basically maximize the value of your shred or your innovation grant application, I think, is key, and pairing it with debt. Obviously debt that's reasonable for the business, of course, but making use of non-dilutive funding sources that are available to you, I think, is another way that businesses are probably leaving cash on the table and leaving fundamentally just growth capital that's available to them on the table.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. People don't really think about it, that you apply for shred, you're going to get $250,000 back. You get a credit or a loan from somebody based on that. You hire even more people to do more work faster, and you apply for an even bigger thing on shred. And so
Yeah,
you're getting more back, you're doing more faster, and you're getting, 65 plus cents on the dollar. And people aren't just taking, and it's a tax credit program. This is money government owes you.
yeah, exactly. And it can be paired with other grant programs too.
Absolutely. And you got to keep those in mind. Can you tell us briefly the difference between IRAP and Shred?
Yeah, so they are very, very similar, and we have a breakdown on our website of the kind of key differences, but they're often called sister programs of each other. Um, so I they're sorry, correct. Um, am I still there?
Yes, you're still here. Sorry.
Sorry, I don't know why you dropped. Yeah, so very, very similar. And
You okay? Seem we're having a little bit of a connection issue.
sorry, sorry, my earbuds are dropping. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, I can hear you. Yeah, so eligibility is largely the same, and like we've helped businesses access both, sometimes in tandem. So it's not necessarily mutually exclusive, and businesses can apply for both programs, both innovation and IP related. Shred tends to have a higher percentage of refundable activities, so it tends to be a preferred option.
And with IRAP, you have to apply for it ahead of time versus Shred, you apply for it after.
Yeah, exactly. But again, both programs can be financed as well. So if you are doing those activities and you need cash ahead of time to kickstart your project or get moving, then again, there are financing options available. So understanding eligibility is the first piece, and then understanding how much you're going to get back under both programs, and if you can apply for both, and then if you can finance one or both applications and make the claims in the second year even bigger. I think those are the kind of questions that founders should work through as well.
Yeah, I got a very generic question here about any grants for startups and grants for starting a business, and they're like hundreds. And I'm looking for more clarification on the types of business or uh, that kind of thing on these questions. But can you
Yeah, I
talk
mean,
generally about that? Yeah, the funds that are available.
Yeah, exactly. So there are, grants are pretty far reaching. It depends on the sector. If you're involved in sustainability or innovation, there might be specific ones for that. Obviously, I would encourage you to register with us so you can see specifically what grants might be available for your business, depending on what scenario you're in. But I think when you're starting out, pairing it with options that are available, like say, I'll pick an example. Futurepreneur is a partner of ours that we do a bit of work with. And again, it's helpful if you're in the ideation phase as well, because they'll pair you off with a mentor that's relevant for your sector and what you're trying to achieve. Give you a little bit of startup loan, and then obviously match it with grants that we can find through Swoop. So yeah, sorry, not specific to your sector. I don't understand what business it is, but come talk to us.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little vague, so it's hard to say. But
Yeah, all good.
Futurepreneur is great. They got a 2-year program from idea onward, and depending where you are, with BDC matching, get up like 60K in low interest loans. Never and
Yeah,
match that with other funding that's available, and like this is how the programs spring off each other.
yeah,
So
exactly. And very often where we come in is, okay, we'll obviously make Futurepreneur available to our users if they're pure startups. But as they're graduating from that 2-year program, they've got traction, they've got validation, they're starting to generate a bit of revenue, but they now need to take the next step in scaling. Then we'll assemble growth products that are relevant for them at that point as well. So it's a whole journey of kind of just supporting growth and trying to make it as fast as possible.
yeah, and there are grants starting from, low thousands to hundreds of thousands. So, like the municipals give out grants. City of Toronto gives up to $5,000 for starting different types of businesses. Never mind provinces and industries and Export Canada and Immigration Canada and are all trying to do all these different things. So it depends when you say, are there grants for startups? Yes, there's lots. It's just a question of what you're doing. Um, is there in the grant programs? Um, what is the thing that people fail to do? Is it just that they fail to apply or in time for these things, or is it just they don't understand that money's available?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, understanding what's available is the big one. Second of all, allocating the time necessary to submit the grant. Even our business has submitted grants in different jurisdictions, and it is time consuming. So identifying where you might need a little bit of extra help from uh, somebody outside the business is a good one to identify, because it makes sure that not only does the grant get submitted on time, but the grant application is the best application it can be. So there are a range of people out there that we work with that can help startups get those larger, more complex grant applications submitted, and basically give them the highest chance of success. But yeah, I think understanding what's out there, understanding what you're eligible for, and then making sure that you've got the actual time to allocate towards writing the grant, and not put it on the long finger, or risk do it incorrectly.
Yeah, and there's other ways of getting funding to pitch competitions, working with incubators and accelerator programs, to get you moving. So there's all sorts of different funding available. The question is, start seriously taking it serious and digging in and working with a partner who's aware of all the different programs. Speaking of partners, um, your site is full of partners. Can you tell us, I don't know, how many partners do you have now here in Canada, and what do you look for in a partner?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think we have 175 or 180 partners, but those take many different facets. So whether it's those larger banks, I think a program we didn't actually mention yet is the CSBFL, the Canadian Small Business Financing Program. Again, where there's businesses looking to invest in hard assets, fit out a location, anything like that, up to 350K available there, typically through the main big 5 or 6 banks, and the credit unions distribute that. Again, we can help you get the application in. So that's something that we help with. So we to go back to your point about partners, we're partnering with the banks, the credit unions, non-bank lenders, equipment finance providers, e-commerce funders, venture capital funds, angel funds, and then we have a whole host of other service providers and intermediaries that we work with to try to give business owners the best service possible. Those are accountants, lawyers, brokers, We work with chambers of commerce to bring our service to their members. We work with accountancy firms. So we really do have a very wide and diverse sort of network of partners.
You really are a one-stop shop when it comes to making sure people have access to all the different types of funding that's available.
That's the mission. That's the mission, Craig.
Now, you're making all these partners. What resources and communities do you recommend here in Canada for people starting up, and why?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few good ones to look at. Depending on the type of company you are. We mentioned Futurepreneur is a great resource. They're a subsidiary of BDC. BDC has a lot of different asset classes, and very often BDC is quite helpful at coming in with another lender to plug a gap. If a lender doesn't want to finance a particular part of the deal, the BDC will come in. So I think from a financing perspective, those are good resources. You mentioned a couple of accelerator programs, incubators. They're super interesting. Communitech is a great one in the Waterloo, Kitchener-Waterloo area that we've done a bit of work with. 111 in Toronto is another accelerator program that's well worth checking out. I think some of your events are fantastic. A lot of the TorontoStarts stuff. OPN is another network that we sometimes do a little bit of work at for pitch events. So there is a really good bustling community and startup ecosystem around Toronto and around Montreal as well. So FinTech Cadence is another one of our partners that do a lot of good stuff with fintechs. So the resources are really kind of endless that are out there for startups.
So, do you have any tips for founders just starting out?
Yeah, I think validation. I mean, as early as possible to get a version of a product out there and start getting user feedback. I think that's invaluable. Particularly when you're investing in R&D or a product. Obviously, as we've talked about, funding is key. So getting ahead of it and try to plot out, the next 12 months, the next 18 months of runway, how you're going to finance it, how you're going to take the next step. I think that's really good planning to do up front. And yeah, I think just knowing your customers and developing a really customer centric product, you'll never go far wrong.
And what's next for you in Swoop?
Well, we're still pretty new to Canada, so we have so much growth ahead of us in Canada, and we want to try to help as many businesses as possible and really become known as a first point of contact for small business in Canada to turn to when they need finance. So we feel like we've got a really good service to offer at no real cost to small business owners in Canada. We think they're largely underserved by some of the traditional financial institutions. And they've probably been having a bit of a rough ride. The market's very fragmented. So we want to try to do as much as we can in Canada. We've already started serving some US businesses. And I think later on this year, we'll start to kind of build a team to enter the US market in a more serious fashion. But for now, it's really just how many businesses can we work with in Canada? How can we get out to the local enterprise teams, into the chambers of commerce, and really kind of make our service available to as many small businesses as possible in Canada.
We have another question here. Do you help out with fundraising strategies, i.e. setting up the right raising targets for the stage, plan of business, etc.?
Yeah. So yeah, interesting boundary. We always have a conversation with founders, help them with their pitch deck, help them become investor ready, help them think about what they want to achieve with their raise and the composition maybe of equity and debt. But fundamentally, we have to also be cognizant of the fact that we're not an advisor, and our service is a free to use service. But we are regulated in other markets, and part of that regulation means that we can't be giving founders or business owners commercial financing advice. We have to be an independent voice. Now, that's a practice that we take to Canada as well. So we tend to stop short of giving businesses hard advice on what they should or shouldn't do when it comes to financing. However, we do have a host of partners that specialize in fundraising strategy and helping businesses to map out what they want to achieve in a capital raise. So where our high level information session might not go far enough, we'll always help a founder find a partner of ours that can help them with whatever they're trying to achieve when they're mapping out their strategy.
Yeah, that's great. Where can people go to find out more about you and Swoop Canada?
As I said, swoopfunding.com. That's our main website. On the website, you can join, create an account. You can reach out to us by phone, which is on the website again. We're active on, I think most of the main social media platforms. So Swoop Funding Canada. You'll find us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. And yeah, I would just encourage you to reach out and connect with us. With any funding query that you might have.
If you're listening on the podcast, all those links will be in the show notes. Just look at the show notes and click on the link that you're looking for. Really appreciate you taking the time today, Daire, to talk about all the different funding options that are available for startups.
Thanks so much, Craig. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. Well, we're not recording anymore. Anybody got any questions in the chat room that you didn't want to ask while we were live? Go ahead.